Please call the roll.
Davis.
Here.
Ogle.
Here.
Massive.
Here.
Potter.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Woodard.
Here.
Pollard.
Here.
Philbin.
Here.
Blomeyer.
Here.
Pugh.
Here.
Banter.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Before we move on to the approval of the agenda, I do want to introduce a new member, Mr. Jim Ballard, and he comes with us with pretty positive credentials from Park and Rec. So usually we'd like to have you hold your opening remarks to 5 minutes. So go ahead, Jim.
I can do that, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to serve on this board. I've been on the Friends Foundation board for the past 6 years, served as treasurer. I'm very active in neighborhood associations. I'm currently president of Easter Lake Neighborhood Association, and I also chair the Coalition of Southside Neighborhood Associations. So, and been very active with the county on the Easter Lake projects and the trails around the lake there.
And very active with Friends.
Very active with Friends.
Well, thank you for being on the board. You're going to find this is a great board, the best one in the city. Okay, let's look at the agenda. We've moved a couple items up because of time. Any comments? Motion?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Let's go to the minutes of the October 23rd meeting. Did everyone have a chance to peruse through those? Any comments? Additions? Corrections? Seeing none, a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And it's approved from October 23rd. We'll go to the Park and Recreation report from the director and let him start. This is one of the items that we move forward. And Ben, I guess we will turn it over to you at this time.
I'll ask Jeff Fleming to make his way to the podium, but first, if you haven't been downtown to the John and Mary Papa John Sculpture Park, you may have not noticed that there's a new piece in the collection. And since we have some newer board members, I'm just going to summarize briefly the relationship. And Jeff's a great partner on behalf of the Art Center. He works tremendously well with our team to make sure that sculpture garden always looks just top notch across the city. So how it works today is the city owns and maintains the land, and the Art Center maintains and takes care of all the art. That's just a brief way of summarizing this. So we truly do need to work well together, and it does work well together. And actually, the police help us with a third tier of security of all that art. So I asked him to come down today to talk about the new piece so you understand what it is and some of the prominence behind this new piece.
Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you for having me. I am thrilled to present the newest sculpture in the Mary and John Papa John Sculpture Park per our agreements with the city of Des Moines. Ai Weiwei is the artist. He is considered by many to be one of the world's most significant artists working today. His personal history is extraordinary. His father was a famous Chinese poet, and so he and his family, including I, were sent to re-education camps in China during China's Cultural Revolution. Since that time, I has been an outspoken critic of China's civil rights records on the world stage, so much so that the Chinese government imprisoned him for a time and confiscated his passport. Upon its return, I has traveled and exhibited widely, speaking out for refugee and civil rights issues around the world. Ai's sculpture, Iron Tree Trunk, is a massive cast of a tree from the Jiangxing province of China. It stands 16 feet high, 3 feet in diameter, and weighs over 3,500 pounds. The artwork references both the Chinese cultural tradition of finding poetry and contemplation in the natural world, such as trees, rocks, and mountains, and the challenges inherent in China's rush to industrialization. Ai's use of iron refers to the tumultuous period in Chinese history called the Great Leap Forward, when families were encouraged to make steel in their homes to help industrialize the country. Most of this became unusable pig iron, as obviously the ability to make steel in a home setting was problematic. Thus, the tree exemplifies the tension between industrial and traditional cultural China, a recurring theme in I's work. This multi-layered sculpture adds significantly to the collection of artworks in the Papa John Sculpture Park and enhances its position as one of the most noteworthy public spaces in the country, something I think we can all be proud of. So thank you for your ongoing efforts in support of our project. Thank you. And I'd be happy to answer questions if you have any.
Questions for Jeff?
How is it anchored in the ground?
What do you
Good
say?
question. It has a very large, how is it anchored in the ground? It has a very large concrete pad, and there are 9 steel rods embedded in the work and embedded in the concrete pad. If there are no more questions, thank you again. I appreciate your support of our ongoing efforts.
Jeff, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, next up is I asked Richard if you can come up and hit play on the video in a second here. But as Richard makes his way up, I know many of you already know about the recent partnership we had with the Knapp family and the Knapp businesses, as well as Des Moines Police Department, to rebuild a playground at Evelyn K. Davis. And we want to show you the results. It's a longer video than normal, but I wanted you to see just all the people and happy faces that pulled together this project. And I want to remind you that it started something like this. We want to thank the chief. That's why we invited the chief here tonight. Is the chief has had a great relationship, and so has the police department with the Knapp family. And we've had a really good relationship ourselves when it came to Evelyn K. Davis. But the Knapps have traditionally done a lot of things with the police department. We looked at our playgrounds, and as you know, we didn't have any money for playgrounds last year. And the oldest playground, which was installed in 1988, was at Evelyn K. Davis, and it was no longer safe to keep in operations. I picked up the phone, and it was as simple as that, to be able to pick up the phone and call a colleague, and I said, Chief, any way you can introduce us a little more formal to the Knapp family? And not only did he do it, he set up a lunch, and after that, I know for a fact that the fact that he came to lunch with us made that gap, the bridge here for us to have the Knapps be further entertained by helping us at Evelyn K. Davis Park. So without further ado, I want to show you a video, and then we'll thank the chief again. see, it started out with a simple playground rebuild, but Des Moines Police and the Knapp family both said, we can do more. They said, what else do you need? More trees, more refurbishment of some of the park shelter features, the basketball courts, the park furniture. And then we realized it was an early out on Wednesday that if we didn't have all this work done at a certain point, these kids are all going to want to play. So we had to bring in the recreation team and have a big event as well. It became quite the party, as you can see. What another great example of a public-private partnership, and we want to thank the police department led by Chief Wingert for helping us get this far.
You know, Ben just informed me that a lot of your officers worked at midnight to 8, and then when they got off at 8 in the morning, came out and helped work all day there at Evelyn Davis. Said speaks very highly. While you're coming up, Chief, I want to take the opportunity to thank you for all you do for kids in the community, and that involves the boxing program, that involves the after school, the early out Wednesday program, Coffee with a Cop, the PAL athletic leagues, your softball police tournaments with embracing other police departments around the state. You really do a lot, and I want to personally thank you, as our board does. We appreciate everything you do.
I appreciate that. I feel a little bit inferior here tonight. My dad was not a Chinese poet. He was a farmer from northern Iowa, but he says a lot of colorful things. He never had his passport revoked either, but he did throw me out of the house when I turned 18. So a lot in common there. But so I've been around here long enough to realize when an operation's running at high speed, low drag, when you got a top shelf crew. And this came with an idea between Director Page and myself. That part wasn't important. What was impressive to watch was the planning, the layout, the organization of the whole thing, from the volunteers to the construction, the equipment. Everything was just laid out perfectly, and all we had to do was provide some labor to that project. For us to walk in and do that and then watch that unfold, no stone was left unturned in the planning of this. That's when you have a department that's running at top speed. Very highly efficient, very competent people. Matt, Ron, Richard, Director Page, they have been a joy to work with. This was just a good idea, but to watch them pull it off was so impressive to me, so impressive to the people that work for me, and so invaluable to that neighborhood that desperately deserved it. So I want to thank the crew at the Parks Department first and foremost. There's a lot going on in the city. I can tell you your Parks Department is ahead of the curve. They're a step ahead. They're always thinking, what's that next great idea? But I will commit to you that your police department is in lockstep with them. Anything they need along the way, we're going to be there for them. So thank you for your service to this board. This is very important work. It's near and dear to my heart. You guys are in charge of fun. I really like fun. But it's important work, and for you guys to take time out of your day, or evening I should say, to commit to this for the betterment of our community. It means a lot to me personally, and it means a ton to this city. So thanks for keeping us involved. We're going to be there every step of the way, and I'm going to go to Iowa City now. Go Hawks. Thanks, gang.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, let's move on to board action. Ben?
Yes, Live Des Moines. The only new update, there's been no changes to the document. We've incorporated your thoughts. We're on track. I want to report that Richard Brown did a nice job. He presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission a couple weeks ago now, and had a unanimous recommendation to move this forward and make it a part of the overall city comp plan. So what is next is obviously tonight your last action if you so choose it to be. And then we have a workshop with the city council on December 10th. And then the meeting after that would be final adoption by the city council. It's been a long time coming, a lot of good process. We're proud of where we're at today. We thank you for all your input in reading an over 200-page document. And again, feel proud like we do that you get to do this during your time on the board. This is not something that comes to a park board or to a staff every generation. So we're excited to be able to say we helped, I guess, make the map for the next 20 years, make the vision for the next 20 years.
Questions for the director?
Would it be helpful if some of us came to the December 10th meeting?
Absolutely. Let us email you from Rebecca the location and time, because sometimes it's in the basement of City Hall, sometimes they move them upstairs depending on crowd size. But it would be helpful to have any of you that want to either make one or both, either the morning workshop or the night that they actually have to take the action to adopt. I've personally been meeting with the council members. We've offered them all one-on-one meetings so they can understand it, because it's such a big thing to try to digest in one setting. And the ones that we've met with have all been very supportive so far.
Okay.
Anything else? On here? Okay, let's have a motion to approve, and then we'll take the roll.
So moved.
Second.
Rebecca, please call the roll.
Davis.
Yes.
Ogle.
Yes.
Bassett.
Yes.
Potter.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Woodard.
Yes.
Ballard.
Yes.
Domain.
Yes.
Omeyer.
Yes.
Hugh.
Yes.
Banter.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you. Board action passes. To going to Part B, now this is always ends up being an 8-7 vote or, something of that nature. This is the cancellation of the December meeting. And over the years, our December meeting, has been, other people have obligations in December. I don't know what it would be. And oftentimes, we don't have a lot of business to conduct during the December. So, the format would be to cancel the December meeting, and then we would meet again in January. So we put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
And everyone, that's good, I like that, Ben. And everyone that votes yes gets a point set up. Okay? So, Rebecca, would you please call the roll?
Davis.
Yes.
Ogle.
Yes.
Bassett.
Yes.
Potter.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Woodard.
Yes.
Ballard.
Yes.
Domain.
Yes.
Omeyer.
Yes.
Hugh.
Yes.
Banter.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Part C, Ben, do you want to give her an overview?
Yep, I'll just do a reminder. So at the last budget discussion, we had 3 budget items for you. I'll take the non-expense side first. We had a revenue enhancement at Grays Lake where we were going to, and we still plan on having a request for proposals on what concessions could look like if the private sector delivered concessions. Today, that's one of the last concession operations we hand in-house still. The other 2 are expense-related items. One would be changing the hours at Grays Lake. Remember, it's open until midnight during those 6 months of the summer hours. And it would reduce back to 10 p.m. to be in line with the fall hours, so we would have a consistent closing time. We would not have a consistent opening time because we want to have earlier hours at Grays Lake and the sun rises earlier, but consistently close at 10. The last item, which has changed since your last meeting and you've had conversations with the city manager, was the reduction of the waiting pool program. He's listened to you. He's decided to take that off the list of considerations, so you're down to just 2 items tonight. We would ask for your support on the 2 Grays Lake items. Again, to summarize, the RFP, which is request for proposals for concession operations. Again, if it doesn't clear more than we make today, we won't do it, but let's see if it can and see if it can offer better services. And 2, the reduction in closing hours at night during the summer and spring hours.
Any comments, questions on that? Actually, we came through that budget process, I would say, in pretty good shape, considering, when we had the city manager agreed with many members that wanted to keep the pools, or not the pools, but the waiting pool structures open as long as we possibly could. And then just the reduction of Grays Lake hours, that's a pretty good budget win, I think, for our departments. So, a motion for Part C,
I move.
okay?
Second.
Rebecca?
Could we have some discussion first?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to relay some of the conversation we had in the executive committee meeting about the budget, and I'd been talking to George about, concerns expressed to the sports, issues with the long-term impact on this board of various cuts that we've seen come down and how it's affecting operations. And one of the concerns was, in this budget, we continue to see our aquatic centers operate under limited hours. They're not open. They don't open early as they used to. They don't close as late as they used to. And now I have small kids that actually see the impacts of some of those things. For example, hot July weather. Try to get off work in time to go join my kids at the local aquatic center in Era House. by the time I get there and hop in the pool, I'm there about 30 minutes and they close and you gotta go home. Well, you know, we're a family of some means. We have other options. Unfortunately, they're not part of the park system if we need to swim later in the evening. But, you know, I look at some of the people that are there, and they're obviously folks of more limited means, and I can tell they're there to escape the heat. And so we did have discussion with Ben about we'd like to see next year's budget, in that budget, a proposal that maybe takes another look at taking full advantage of our aquatic facilities and having them open for a longer period of time. I believe the figure is, you know, that was something like a $75,000 cut a few years back to that cost savings that reduced those hours. And it just seems to me that we're going in the wrong direction if we're limiting access to what are frankly quite popular facilities, and maybe see ways that you can address that.
Any other comments on that?
I would maybe just echo a little bit of what Lloyd said, and it's not great that we're limiting some of the hours, and it's hopefully something we can continue to look at in increasing some of the budget considerations in the future. I do think it's a good compromise based on what was presented originally, and I do plan to support it, but it is a little frustrating when each year there's more and more cuts. So if we can continue, you know, not just look at cuts, but down the road look at reestablishing some of the opportunities that exist would be really great.
I think it was a very good meeting. The city manager was there, and Lloyd, you brought up some very legitimate points. I do want to let everyone know that Part C is just upon this year's budget, but moving forward, Ben and the city manager were going to get together and do a study on, you know, the impact of the community, the impact of scheduled swim lessons that we run at the same time, regarding personnel, staff, and all of it. And then as a lot of things are, this is contingent upon the sales tax program in March, if that vote comes. And so it is in the works. It didn't fall on deaf ears, and I really respect Ben and the city manager for agreeing to talk about this moving farther down the road. And also, Ben is going to do some summer surveys with our participants at the pools too. So absolutely, you did a great job on that, Lloyd. Anything else? Okay. Motion has been put forward on that and been seconded. Rebecca, please call the roll.
Davis.
Yes.
Vogel.
Yes.
Bassett.
Yes.
Potter.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Woodard.
Yes.
Pollard.
Yes.
Romaine.
Yes.
Lohmeyer.
Yes.
Hugh.
Yes.
Cantor.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, that has passed. Moving to the receive and file, and I think we have a presentation on the Reno Dog Park.
Matt Kalsovich will talk about a recent public meeting we had and what our next steps will be.
Chair Davis, members of the Park and Recreation Board, Matt Kalsovich, Recreation Manager. Thank you for this opportunity, as been mentioned, to give you an update about the Reno Memorial Dog Park relocation. To orient you again in regards to the location of the dog park and its historical or traditional spot just south of Sargent Park, near the intersection of Hubble and Euclid Avenues. As many of you recall, this was one of the locations that was hit very hard with the flooding from over the summer. In addition to Sargent Park, this bore a large brunt of the damage, and you can see some of the images there of how the dog park in the location it's been was adversely affected. One of the other aspects of this initiative was looking at the road expansion and construction in regards to Hubble and Euclid Avenues. You can see on this image the yellow line depicting the outline or the fence that was previously located, identifying the 3.7 acres of the Reno Memorial Dog Park. And in this early picture of the construction, you can see already how that was infringing on that space. And if you've been by there recently, you can see that's really been a significant impact on what used to be the layout of the dog park. To highlight some of the notes about our first public meeting and the exploration of ideas and opportunities through this process, we held that meeting on September 18th at Grandview Golf Course, and we were seeking input at the time about the location of the dog park and if it was right to relocate to the new proposed location or if it was something where it was right to keep it at its current location or where it's existed and have it be potentially modified. We talked about the project timeline and the way we would proceed with next steps, and we feel good about where we are in the process at this point. To talk a little bit more about the impact and what we shared with the community at that first public meeting, in the yellow you can see again that 3.7 acre outline of what the dog park used to look like and how it first existed. The red dashed line is a depiction of how things would be modified, both based on the flooding issues that we had, but more so the road construction and the expansion of, again, Hubble and Euclid in that intersection and some other road work being done around the QT. This next map highlights really what the proximity of the new facility would be to the old. So toward the top of the map where you can see again the historical or traditional location of the Reno Memorial Dog Park, that 3.7 acre parcel that would be condensed down to 2.3 acres in one idea about maintaining the space. And that section just to the south or on the bottom part of the map would be a 12.5 acre parcel that was previously the County Estates Village Mobile Home Park. Some of you know about the closure of that facility or those residents during some previous flooding. And that red dashed line within that space is the potential new dog park, approximately 3 acres. We had some terrific support for the move. In addition to the great conversation we had with the public on September 18th, we did receive support from the Des Moines Police Department, who were encouraged about the visibility of the facility and the sight lines to keep an eye on interactions and activity in the space. We also received positive support from the 5 neighborhood associations, some of which are in direct contact with that space itself, but others have a significant population that we think would have interest, and we heard from, very specifically both in the public meeting and outside of that meeting, about how the dog park being moved to that location would impact their neighborhood. And most of that feedback was positive to the point that these neighborhood associations each gave us a letter of support. To really talk about some of the very specific advantages of the move, first and foremost, we want to highlight a better and safer access for pedestrian connectivity. Some of you who know the previous location of the dog park knew you had to park across the street for the parking lot designated for Sargent Park. There was still a high traffic flow there coming out of the QT and down the way, potentially back onto Euclid. This new location would have it be right next to a trail and closer to a neighborhood, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. It's currently not a space that's in use by any other user group. Many of you know some of our parks have populations that are based there, whether it be for a youth sports program or a contracted program. So again, this was a rare space that had availability to absorb a potential new facility like this one. It's already under city ownership, so again, another advantage of this potential change. And then the existing off-street parking. I just mentioned the parking situation with the old facility. This has a parking lot directly next to where what would be, I guess, the north fence in a potential new design. And it does not require crossing of a major street to gain access. Again, a great benefit of the move here potentially. A few other items that we definitely listed to the group that attended at the public meeting, and we've tried to share some publicly. Opportunity to have a larger dog park area, at least in relation to the way the current space would have been cut down to that 2.3 acres from the previous 3.7 acres. The proposed new location would still be a 3 acre parcel, which is very sizable considering the use patterns and the need that have existed in this area for dog parks. Use of the existing hard surface for a walking path. The other great advantage there is with maintenance. It's very difficult sometimes to maintain a fence line, especially in an environment like that that's being used constantly. So we value and appreciate that aspect of the space. Higher quality natural setting, including trees and a creek. And then the potential to serve a larger population of users. I mentioned the neighborhood that is just to the east of this new location that we think, again, with the trail and some other access that hasn't been there before, could really see an increase in our use and our ability to serve people in that neighborhood specifically. So from here, talk a little bit about the next steps. We actually have our next public meeting scheduled next Thursday, December 6th at 6:30 p.m. at the East Side Library. We'll be contacting those people who joined us at the first public meeting, but again, we welcome all people who are interested in this process and want to hear more. That meeting is going to be very much focused on talking about the features of the dog park itself and a little bit about the visionary process of coming up with a park that complements what we're doing there in that space with the dog park. From there, we'll be developing a site plan here internally. And Jenny Richmond and her team, Lee Wheelock, will be involved in that process as well, about laying out a facility that then we'll actually bring back to your next Park and Recreation Board meeting on January 22nd at 5 p.m. right here in this room at the MSC. And we'll be inviting people, again, at this meeting we'll have next week, and then through some other public notice about coming to this meeting to make any comments about the proposed site plan. From there, we'll be looking to get project bids in potentially the spring of 19. And then plan to begin construction. And now this is for the dog park portion only in the summer of 19. Additional park features, again, that will be part of this planning process coming up, would be pending additional approved funding, and we'd be going through our traditional process of allocating funds for future amenities and additions in that space. And that's the report here tonight. I thank you for the opportunity to share this information with you. I'd be happy to try and answer any other questions you have about this at this time. Yes?
I noticed that it seemed like there was enough room to grow the dog park back to its 3.7 acres. Is there any reason why you didn't use any of that other space to go back to 3.7 acres?
I would say it's really in regards to what the future vision might be. Room for playground, basketball court, some of these other things that might be part of the discussion in our public meeting. I can tell you that that's definitely still a consideration. I'm not sure, again, without hearing some of that feedback and maybe getting the feedback of this group too, if it would be warranted to occupy the majority of this space with the dog park footprint without thinking about some of those other amenities, but certainly up for discussion and consideration.
I think we're not locked in on any one thing or size yet. We want to go to the public. We just know that this site is more flexible because it's larger. It could have a lot more things in it. What I want to make sure, one message I want to be very consistent is, the money that we have is only enough money to put the fencing back up and the existing things that we lost. But we realize that this lends itself to a lot of other opportunities. That little dotted line you can see there that kind of crosses from north to south is the Gailey Wilson Trail, and you can see all those residents to the east side. If we had a trail connection there, we think that would be very popular. We think that there's a shelter possibility. It could be a sports court. But we know one thing for sure, I think you've all seen this, is parks are only successful when the community that is going to use them tells us what they want in them. So we want to make sure, but right now that's just a massing exercise to say this is what this could look like right now.
Okay.
Joel, one other thing I'll add in regards to your question. This design is very circumstantial. I mentioned one of the benefits of having the paved walking path. This is actually the point where that turns and can help you complete a full loop. So again, decision made at this point based on what's there for us in terms of existing infrastructure.
Thanks, ma'am.
One more
yes.
quick question. The proposed relocation, is it still is it still in the flood zone, or is it?
They are both in the flood zone still, the floodway. This one right here tends to have less damages in portions of this property than the other property does. The good news is your greenway plan for 4 Mile that you adopted maybe about a year ago, I'm going off of memory. This land, we've talked to the Polk County Conservation. They're willing to take this old piece and put it into their greenway system to manage, maintain in the way that the county maintains their conservation land. So yes, that's the long answer, saying that less flood likely here, but also many more pros. We always felt that as a staff, but we wanted the community to certify they felt the same reasons here as why we should move this.
And one of the silver linings, I think, with a lot of the flooding along the 4 Mile Creek area is it's opened up, again, and we talked about this before, a big stretch of greenway that runs the entire length of the city, quite frankly, that creates a lot of opportunity, because park and rec type things like disc golf courses and other low impact uses that are minimally impacted by flooding are kind of the only things that you can do in these areas, and the city's buying up a bunch of land now because of this. And that's all probably going to be park and rec, or at least opportunities for park and rec to explore options on uses. So it's nice to see dog park in that area, and that we can find some uses that are cultural pluses for the community, for the local neighborhoods there.
Well, it seems like this is a perfect example of the depth of planning that your department does and the consultation with neighborhoods. It's really well thought out. Thank you.
Thank you.
What happens to the old park? The existing Reno Park that,
That's the parcels that we would give to Polk County Conservation,
Okay.
and they're willing to take that.
okay.
Yep. They're gonna be managing a bunch of spots up and down the Greenway with the city. In fact, on Monday night, there is action by the city council being proposed to spend up to $1 million of Polk County conservation money to do additional buyouts to help supplement the city funds so we can expedite all these buyouts that we should have happen in this area.
Any stuff from the old dog park recyclable? Was any of that fence able to be saved?
Well, it's difficult to say what we're gonna try to do is just the mesh part of the fencing, is try to recycle that if we can. There's no guarantees, but everything else is pretty much a loss.
Okay.
We ask the same questions.
Anything else, Heather? Anything?
You may get questions or comments from constituents that dog park passes are being renewed as we speak for next year. That runs through the city clerk's office by design, because she needs to make sure they have all their licenses and spay, neuter, that type of thing. So we did not change our fee from $20 to reduce it because we're down one dog park. We've always charged that $20 fee even when we had one dog park. The first one was on the south side at Ewing Park. Then we added the Riverwalk Dog Park, and now we have this one. We have never changed the fee, so if somebody asks you, since it's going to be open next year, late in the year, we're not going to change our fee, but just be patient with us, it's coming.
What's the hours of the dog park, of all of them? Are they
Same as the
all?
parks.
Yep.
Sunrise to sunset, basically.
Okay. And all dog parks are unlit, right? There's no lighted dog parks in
No.
Des Moines. Okay.
I do have a question. Do residents have to show proof of immunization, or how does that work?
They have to show that to get the license, and then once they have their license, then we have what we call dog park ambassadors. And I'm surprised to this day that we can still get enough people to volunteer since we opened the first one 7-8 years ago. I think Jim would know because he was part of that in Ewing Park. And so we use the dog park ambassadors. They get a free dog park pass if they put so many hours per year in to help us say, hey, show me your pass. Because
okay.
it's not a perfect system, but we don't have enough funding to allow how to have staff out there checking these things. So,
I always wondered about that.
yep, that's how we do it. We use dog park ambassadors, which is a thing that Cali manages through volunteers. So,
All three of the facilities actually have a entry keypad, and that's part of what's distributed to pass holders when they register and pay for their badge.
Is that kind of new? I don't remember
it's
that.
about 2 years old or 2 or 3.
Okay.
So we change the pass code every year. And
Oh, okay.
Is there any way you track usage?
To Ben's point about not having someone out there all the time, I can tell you that for 3 years in a row, we've surpassed 2,000 passes sold, and that's access to any of the 3 dog parks. But to chart daily use, it's a similar situation to maybe what we have with the spray grounds, because we don't have a dedicated staff at the facility. Some of those patterns we're able to use some estimates and some formulas about, and certainly that 2,000 number staying strong certainly shows that the response is pretty consistent. One other note about this location in particular, this has been the lowest used of the 3. To Joel's point about the size, we certainly don't want to trivialize that. I think the access off of Hubble, some of those other benefits could bring this space into a new era in terms of approaching the use of the other 2 locations, which, even though we haven't been able to chart it, have visibly been much higher in previous years.
I think the parking itself will make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Are any of these breed restrictive, dog parks in general? I don't know much about them. I mean, you must have a license.
Correct.
And when you get a license, doesn't that certify that your shots and everything are up to date? So basically, you just need a license and then your membership for the dog park, which you said is $20.
yeah, there is some nuances because there's different ordinances in effect for just different breeds of dogs in the city in general. I'd have to review my knowledge on that and get back to you on that one.
I'm just concerned because, some breeds have been deemed aggressive, and I'm just, have we had a problem of that?
Very few.
Yeah.
There has been some, but very, very few.
Sure, Davis, if I could speak to that, I've got a
Go ahead.
pass. I've got 2 little dogs, and I live over by Easter Lake, so I use the Ewing Park Dog Park a lot. And there's size restrictions. There's the big dog area and the little dog area. So if I feel like there's some rowdy big dogs, I'll take my little dogs to the little dog area. And we've not had any problems in the 3-4 years I've had passes.
If we were dogs, what section would we be in?
We would be in the big dog section.
I think you'd be worried if you were in the little dogs.
Anything else? I thought that was very informative. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, a motion to receive and file.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
All right, back to the report of the director. We have Callie coming up on your Did You Know on Woodlawn Park, and she has found quite a bit of unique history here, so I think you'll find this entertaining. It may be a record, actually.
I'll be fast. I'll try. Right?
Now, keep in mind our pre-meeting discussion.
Okay. Okay. Well. Chair Davis, members of the Park and Recreation Board, Callie Leal Courtright, Parks and Recreation Supervisor. Our story takes place north of downtown, just south of the Des Moines River, and north of the VA hospital in the Lower Beaver neighborhood. Woodlawn Park was purchased in 1959, but the adventures on this land began long before. In 1857, the park property was farmland owned by one of Des Moines' pioneers, George Sneer. George Sneer was a business person, prominent early Des Moines civic supporter, and a friend of Wesley Redhead, who you've heard about before. He farmed the property outlined here in yellow, where the park is now, until 1860 when he returned to the city. He was then elected alderman on the city council, city clerk, and street commissioner. He had a grain, fruit, provision, and storage business in 1874, and in 1877 he was elected mayor for 2 years. At this time, there were no sewers, the streets were unpaved, and so during wet seasons, streets were nearly impassable, they were flooded and muddy. Mayor Sneer was very important in making Des Moines a city. He helped push our citizens by bringing an expert engineer in from Chicago. This engineer drew up elaborate paving and sewer plans, and property owners were really shocked by the cost of what that would be for their city. But council approved his plans, and a 60-inch brick sewer was built, and soon after paving began. Not only this, but Mayor Sneer thought that bridges should be made free. At the time, they were not. The facilities for crossing the rivers were really inadequate, and people living in the city didn't think that they should be taxed to build something that benefited the entire county. It was defeated once, but he convinced them and that was also finally passed through, and our city took on a whole new life. Meanwhile, back on what will become the park, in 1882, Charles C. Norris and his wife were living on that property, and Norris was a pioneer lawmaker and an Iowa attorney general and a state judicial judge. But around 1891, George Sneer passed away, and this prompted the selling of his land. As you see, he was one of the 3 oldest settlers in Des Moines at the time. He's buried in Woodland Cemetery. As time goes on, the Norris family then sells to the Pickering family. And in the 1930s, you see in this aerial here, the yellow box again showing the vicinity of the park in the Sailor Township. Prior to this, it was called the Valley Township. By 1939, we fast forward to the late 30s and zoom out a little bit. We see on the City Planning and Zoning Board recreational facilities map the relationship of the park to where Des Moines was in size and development. And you see it's located actually outside of Des Moines at the time. Here we see in the paper November 11th, 1945, the property the park will be located on is part of the new Beaver Airfield. For several weeks, the Register reported Beaverdale residents believed they were witnessing airplane forced landings. Planes coasted down from the sky and disappeared behind the trees several blocks away. They soon found out that this new airfield is opening, and the new hangar accommodates 11 planes and is nearly complete. So Pickering had leased the property that the park eventually will be on to brothers John and Richard McDowell and their brother-in-law Walter Siebert, who was a Grimes farmer. The next year, in 1946, Airways Incorporated purchases the land from the Pickerings, and they further developed the Beaver Airfield. Research shows that Larry Farnham, who was an aviation pioneer and inventor of the fly cycle, was possibly running the operation, and there were 2 landing strips. Here you can see the hangars to the left and the future park property to the right. Even before we were a park, we were a source of entertainment and community gatherings. Here you see, subject to weather, 40 school children will be given free rides in a blimp, and a man will go to 1,500 feet in altitude and jump out with a parachute. The blimp was in town as part of an advertisement for Continental Baking Company. The same year, a World War II Goodyear airship takes off from the Beaver Airfield and flies over the Iowa State Fair. Unfortunately, by 1948, Mr. McDowell is involved in a plane crash in Kansas, resulting in 4 deaths, including his own. And by 1949, the wives of the plane crash victims sue Mrs. McDowell for the plane crash. By the 1950s, we see here the airfield is gone. And we also see in the 1950s that the McVicker Freeway, known now as I-235, was being built. That cut through town, and it cut through trolley routes, which changed the way that the city developed. Unfortunately, mass transit then saw a 72% drop in a decade, and this meant more individuals with cars and people moving further out to the edges of town. Here, the Des Moines Register shows May 24th, 1952, an article on the left. This is prior to the park being developed, but tells us where the name Woodlawn comes from. The school district board members adopt the name Woodlawn for the new elementary school at Lower Beaver and Madison Avenue, and it was a nod to the former East Woodlawn and West Woodlawn schools, Woodlawn referring to the wooded area surrounding. The park will also adopt the name Woodlawn 7 years later after this. But besides for the new school, this area of town is growing, and by 1953, the land previously occupied by the airport now houses Mercury Coach Corporation, part of Ironwood Sales. They are producing mobile homes in the buildings previously occupied by the airport. On a side note, the picture on the right is the former East Woodlawn School, which was just torn down this year, 110 years after it was closed in 1908, because the Register reported it had lack of attendees. People were keeping their kids home to husk corn and dig potatoes. By 1954, Airways Incorporated sells the land to Ironwood Sales, and by 1955, we see that the Mercury Coach Corporation plant catches fire. They end up rebuilding in 6 weeks. In 1956, 156 acres around that area are annexed, including where the park property was, but the property where the plant was not annexed. And that's just the property just to the west of the park. In 1957, almost 100 years after Mayor George Schneer owned the property, we see one of the developers, Ron Greenwood, who lived in the neighborhood, name this area Deborah Heights after his daughter Deborah. Our park property is not shown yet, but a couple years later it will be on the south end of this diagram. 1958, the new Woodlawn School finally opens, and this article shows the new Deborah Heights development, which will have 300 to 400 new homes. To the south in the photo, in the lower right-hand corner, you can see the empty land. That will soon become the park. Of note, too, this year, Mercury Trailer Plant closes because the Highway Commission won't let trailers over 8 feet wide move on Iowa highways. Mercury Coach finally sells in 1959, and it is annexed by 1960. The park was purchased in March 1959 from the Northwest Development Corporation, who developed that Deborah Heights area. An internal document stated that the park sometimes is known as a playground, not a park, because of the lack of trees. Another big thing in the news that year was that Merle Hay Mall, Iowa's first big shopping center, opens nearby, and the suburbs start booming. Here you see in the picture development continuing to the north of the park. There is still a strip to the north and the east that's undeveloped, and this area remains undeveloped actually for the next 50 years. On the left-hand side of the register here, you see in March of 1960, heavy winter snow delays the park work for the park getting opened. The same time, the residents are petitioning for a skating rink, and the 1960 annual report says later in the fall, the park is completed. It includes a shelter house, a wading pool, play equipment, a lighted softball diamond, and a skating rink. They actually had over 1,600 skaters in the first 6 weeks that they opened. So they got what they had asked for. Woodlawn Park has summer play programs you see here with supervised activities. And in 1967, you see on this recreational facilities map in the paper, Woodlawn Park up in the northwest. As you see in all areas of town, there are large parks, except for on the northwest side of town. In 1967, the Park and Recreation Board asked the city to purchase 10 acres of land it's the last wild area to add to Woodlawn. Board President Mrs. Luther Hill Jr. urges, this is one of the few remaining native wooded areas in Des Moines. The board argues if the city doesn't purchase this land, it will be a loss to residential development. And the asking price at that time was $50,000, so the council voted no against it, and Park Board asked for it to be condemned, and they voted no again. There were many articles in the paper this year because residents fully supported the purchase and expansion of the park. But we see here on the top left, by the end of the year, the land was cleared for development. The landowner claims the city didn't even try to negotiate with her, and she would have liked to see it be a park too. In the 1970s, we see more development surrounding the area, and an inventory in the 70s shows we have basketball and horseshoe, jungle gym, merry-go-round, slides, a shelter house, tetherball, tennis courts, wading pool, and spring animals. But by this time, it says that there is no longer a baseball diamond. It had been removed. This drawing is from a 1973 newspaper of what the park layout would have looked like. Unfortunately, by 1976, this letter to the editor says the park is an eyesore and full of litter. It is unsafe for children. It's been about 9 years since the park board proposed the expansion, but again, in the 1976 park plan, we called for another 5 acres of land to be purchased and the park to be expanded, possibly that property to the west. In 1977, the neighborhood is still complaining that there are youth drinking beer in the park after hours, and they've asked for extra park patrols. The Parks and Recreation Director, William Foley, recommends to the park board that a new 9 p.m. curfew be imposed for small neighborhood parks. They had been closing at midnight at the time. He also said the parking lot should be barricaded at 9 p.m., and he recommended a park patrol unit as part of the police department, but City Council rejected this idea, saying it would be too costly. The next day, this ad ran in the paper for all these supervised activities available in the park, including youth tennis and recreation programs, all in the summer for free. In addition to this, all these programs that were going on, we see in the register here, they were also offering 5-mile and longer 15-mile bike trips for kids. In July, it shows the kids rode from Woodlawn Park to Living History Farms. It's hard to imagine the youth today taking on such an adventure. In the 1980s, we continued to see supervised play in the park with winter recreation and summer recreation, such as tennis. But by the mid-1980s, the Des Moines Register reports that Woodlawn's play equipment is getting mediocre marks because wood play equipment is now in. The 90s park evaluation shows that the shelter and bathrooms have holes in the roof and the walls. The play equipment and picnic tables still need to be replaced. The basketball court has bent rims and the tennis nets need to be tightened, so there's a lot to be fixed in the 90s. We also see that the recreational programs have changed, and we have a traveling carnival crew. Programs where less supervised playgrounds are gone, and so are tennis lessons, unfortunately, in the park. In 1994, the Woodlawn shelter is heavily damaged by fire, possibly from a cord on an air monitoring device installed by staff. But we're on the upswing because by 2002, we're listed as one of the top 7 favorite parks in Des Moines. We see the neighborhood becoming more organized and involved in the planning and the programming of the parks. And with that neighborhood association helping us, we see the park begin to transform. Groups such as Latino Dreams are using the open space for play, and the teens say it's like therapy for them. In 2006, following the wading pool closure in the previous year, we have a new water feature installed, and this spray feature is the first of its kind for us, as it didn't rely on any type of staffing. Unfortunately, in the same year, arsons burned our portable restroom enclosures and tables. You can see here in 2007, the newest development, Sawyer's Landing, to the north and the east of the park. A playground in 2008. And by 2011, we add on community garden spaces and a connection to the new Sawyer's Landing development. Here are the amenities in 2013. You see the community garden to the northwest corner. We have open space, tennis courts, soccer fields, basketball courts in the heart of the park, the water feature and the shelters and the playground on the eastern edge of the park. And by 2014, we have park redesign plans. In 2014, a full-size basketball court was added, ADA sidewalks, benches, and portable restroom enclosure. And by 2015, we have a new park sign, and our tennis courts are resurfaced. All of these amenities still exist today. So maybe it's not diving off of blimps, but it's really still a fun gathering space for our community, as it has been for more than 70 years. The open space has been used on and off for Northwest soccer for the last 15 years, and this year marked 5 years of a community Easter egg hunt in the park. We also still have free flicks in the park and many other cleanup events hosted by the Lower Beaver Neighborhood Association, as they've adopted and cared for the park for years. So although this park is one of our newer parks, it's rich in history and can be tied to the earliest pioneers and builders of our great city. We hope it continues to be a play area for our future leaders. Chair Davis, members of the Park Board, thank you. Do you have any questions?
I thought that was a great report and very thorough. And
Was
I
that quick
remember
enough, Josh?
when that park had a softball field there years
You do?
ago.
Uh-huh.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you.
Joel, do you have a question?
Nope.
Yeah.
I'll just give my, good job. So.
Thanks.
All right, last up is just a holiday specials reminder for those looking for maybe some gifts at the last moments here. There's a couple ideas that are specific to Des Moines Parks and Recreation.
Chair Davis, members of the Park and Recreation Board, Matt Kalsovich, Recreation Manager. Thank you for this opportunity to share information with you about our seasonal special promotions for Parks and Recreation. First, we start with our pool passes. This is an exciting opportunity for people to do something this time of year that you wouldn't actually be thinking much about, but it is a tremendous savings, and we think something great to put out there to really remind people about what's out there coming soon during this very chilly time. But you can see a breakdown of our fees, and that holiday special is one that really is significant. So this this special is only available online, so we direct people to our website, dmparks.org. Again, engagement with that opportunity for the fact that we do our swim lesson registrations through that come that time of year, and we really want to get people into the habit of going to that site to look for their information. So the holiday special pricing is a limited time. It started already. I'm happy to say we've actually already sold 27 passes, so we're off to a tremendous start and people being interested in this unique opportunity. We've actually extended the deadline past what we have in traditional or in the past. We used to go up to Christmas Eve, and it was a gift idea, but we thought it was right to extend it out through the end of the year, so December 31st. That aligns with some other registration timelines and specials that we're running this time of year, so certainly wanted to give that opportunity to people if they want it. That other special pricing time frame we have is really the month of April. It's our early bird special, and again, a breakdown there of how those fees change. And then always we want to mention the grass program, and you can see the significant savings. We've talked about that several times, but again, people have the opportunity to take advantage of that program. It is significant. Next, we have our 2019 season golf passes. The process for this opportunity is to really purchase a gift card at Blank Golf Course, and that's our course that stays open year-round, essentially. Again, to remind people, when we talked about golf fees, I know we mentioned that if it's 40 degrees and no snow, Blank Golf Course is open for business. Waveland and Grandview have shut down for the season, but the clubhouse there at Blank is operating as normal. People would go there to purchase a gift card that would then be converted into a badge or a pass, as we call them, synonymous terms there, in their first visit of the season. And we've listed a breakdown of the opportunities people have there with the PAR badge, which actually has card included and the price there. We have individual badges, and you can see the price range on those, a couples badge, senior for those golfers over 62, and then our junior pass or junior badge for anyone under 18. And a reminder, all badges, passes, include Waveland, Blank, Grandview, and now Jester Park. That was an addition for 2018. It was very well received. So again, an additional benefit of a purchase of this as a gift or something for yourself for 2019. Next, we have our holiday wreaths, and this is a service at our Des Moines cemeteries. Thanks to our cemetery manager, Ganesh Gampat, for providing me with this information. This is a program we've run before, but certainly want to promote it again during this time. These are $50 each, and they're handmade here in the U.S. These are 24-inch wreaths with easel. And even though all that we have this year for purchase or that we have available at this time already in the season are artificial or synthetic, they do come with natural pine cones and holly berries. Ganesh provided me a great picture there of that, decorating that monument in particular. Free placement at all of our Des Moines municipal cemeteries. And you can see to order, you would just need to call that number on the screen to finalize your payment and place your order and your specific instruction about placement. Next, we have our iconic Park and Rec t-shirts. This is a program that we started a few years ago with our partner from Twin Forks Trading Company. And you can see a couple of the latest designs there we've included, but they're up to probably about somewhere between 10 and 15 different designs specific to our Parks and Rec system. Cost is about $26 to $36. Started back in 2017. These are a product of Iowa. One of the great benefits of a purchase here is that 10% of sales go back to Des Moines Parks and Rec. And I'm happy to report that we have had some significant sales, so that's a win-win. But again, if you're interested in seeing the whole selection, there's the website there for you on the screen, twinforkstradingco.com, and you click on the Des Moines link. Now, that Des Moines link includes several other iconic features in the city, but all of our park and recreation specific t-shirts are listed under that subheading. And then finally, we wanted to give a mention to the Friends of Des Moines Parks and perhaps the gift of membership. We have obviously a tremendous relationship with the Friends and wanted to mention that their memberships start at $50 if you or anyone you know is really looking to get active. I mentioned the number of nearly $1 million in project contributions, and I can let Sarah speak a little bit more to how that is connected throughout our system here shortly. But if somebody you know is really interested in finding out more details, I would recommend them contacting Sarah specifically, and her email address is there on the screen, or check out their newly updated website at friendsofdmparks.org, and you can actually see their new logo, part of their branding campaign here that they started recently on the screen as well. And those are just some images of places where the Friends have contributed to our system, whether it be with some physical amenities, playgrounds, additional features to the parks. We have our access for Grays Lake, for the boat rental, swim lessons, contributions to events themselves like Trash Bash. The Friends are very active in several places on several fronts in our system, and we certainly wanted to mention that. Sarah, anything else you'd like to add specifically?
Just one quick plug and a reminder, it is Giving Tuesday today, and we had an anonymous donor come through. So any donations made to the Friends up to $1,000 will be matched. So if you want to double your impact today, you have till midnight.
That's excellent. Thank you. And those are our specials. We appreciate your help in spreading the word about those opportunities to the community. I'd be happy to try and answer any of the questions you have at this time.
Pretty silent group. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's go to the report of the boards. Anything, Andrea, anything on the urban conservation?
We had met the week before Thanksgiving, had an update from Richard on the Live DSM proposal, which everyone's heard about, and then also the Des Moines River Trail Phase 2 out in Easter Lake, and how that will eventually connect county fields with the Easter Lake Loop. So that will hopefully be an exciting update we'll get at the board level at some point.
And the funding is in place for that too, isn't it?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Golf committee?
You don't have any, haven't had a meeting.
We met in October, and the main thing to come out was that kind of give some report on revenues. If you recall, back in August, revenues were 35% below 2017 year-to-date, and as of
The what now? Oh.
revenues in August, revenues were 35% below 2017 year-to-date. In October, they had improved to 10% below 2017 year-to-date. So some improvement. I'm not so sure that they haven't kind of declined again relative to 2017 year-to-date. It hasn't been a very good fall,
But that's weather related, isn't it?
largely, yeah.
Okay, anything else on golf? Joel?
The Cemetery Committee met Wednesday, November 7th, and we discussed the exciting update of City Chapter 34, along with the exciting update of Iowa Code Section 523, which I do believe they're going through and working on to make sure the cemetery code is in line with city code and state code. Our next meeting is December 5th. Cemetery fees are going to, or they might have already gone to, they already went to the city council and they were approved.
Anything else?
We had a beautiful presentation on the Live Des Moines. John came to our meeting and gave us another update on the Live Des Moines. So I feel well versed in Live Des Moines.
Heather, anything on trails?
Nothing new. No.
Well, anything that anyone wants to add, as this is our final meeting, and I guess I will be accepting Christmas gifts up through January the 10th, in case you want to run those over.
Speaking of gifts, make sure you grab your poinsettia, grown locally by our team at our greenhouses, all for you, for all you do for the city.
Those are very nice, and very beautiful. We always get those. Those are very nice.
Thank you.
Hey, listen, I just want to say that I'm pleased to be part of this group because I think we all have a mission and thoughts on things, and I hope everyone next year brings their thoughts and ideas, because we all have an individual passion, whether it be spray grounds, whether it be ball diamonds, regardless. I think everyone brings their passion, and I want everyone to express their passion moving forward and stuff as we approach. I'll say this again, I think this is the best committee. You know, basically as you get older in life, you watch a lot of those committees on TV and stuff because you don't really get invited to many parties. And I will tell you, we are a very successful group. We really are. We get a lot done. Our attendance is right up there with the best, and we do some great things for the city, and more importantly, we do some great things for kids, and it's great. Closing comments? Anyone?
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Anyone? Jim, how'd it go? What do you think?
It's pretty easy, George.
You gonna be here for the next one?
I think I'll come again.
Okay. We need a motion to, and it's only 6:10. Motion to,
So moved.
okay,
Second.
motion to adjourn? Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting over. Thank you, guys.
See you guys next year.
Yeah, see you next year.